Hello, everybody. Welcome to Torn Tuesday. I'm Justin. Cliff is on his way right now. You know how it goes. A little jiggery pokery here or there. Sometimes the Zoom just doesn't want to work, or the Zoom audio doesn't want to work. How many of you have been in meetings and you just can't get it to work? And you can hear, but they can't hear you. That's the world we live in right now. We are still in pandemic, but we are all vaccinated here, aren't we? Chat room. I'm looking at you, chat room. I see Brendan Marr on Twitch. Princess Toy Nerd is in YouTube along with Alex and Cecilia, Dominique, Emma, Jill, Lisa, Sarah Draper. One of these days, Sarah Draper will meet you. Wait, Sarah, weren't you at the Baggins birthday bash in Griffith Park? I thought you lived out of state, but I think I saw your glowing elven presence whisking among the woods. I never quite got a full glimpse of you, but I guess if you were there and you were dressed as an elf, that makes sense that I would maybe not see you because you were prancing among the trees of Griffith Park. Oh, yes, you were there. You were. Oh, my God. I wish I could have said hi, but so do all who live to see such times. Wait, no. So do all wish to communicate with elves, but they ain't got time for us normal hobbit folk. Andrew has got a new name, Otaku Senpai. I don't know what that means, and I maybe don't want to know what that means. Nadia, hello. Sometimes we just don't take enough time to welcome all you guys, because we've been doing this show for 10 years. We're coming up on 500 episodes. We might have already passed it. I lost count at like 30. And the reason we keep doing the show, because as you know, there's no ads on our YouTube channel. We don't have any sponsors. You never see Cliff with his beautiful deep voice saying, "Today's episode brought to you by shaving products." No, we don't do that. The OneRing.net is all volunteer, and we've all donated our time. Hundreds of people have donated their time over the years, and it's all volunteer. Some people just don't understand how you cannot turn something successful into a business. So as long as I got your attention here, I want to put the word out. The next 10 years are going to be amazing. It's going to be thrilling. There's the show, there's the Amazon show, there's the anime from Warner Brothers, the Shield Maidens of Rohan show movie, and who knows, the Golem game, who knows what board games and books will be coming out. Anyway, the next 10 years are going to be amazing. And a lot of us who had a bunch of time 20 years ago, because we were in high school or college or maybe even less, a lot of us have families and made kids and got divorced and have jobs and now have responsibilities, whatever that means. So if there's anyone out there that wants to raise their hand and knows a little bit about WordPress and stuff like that and wants to help keep the regular fans up to date on what's going on with all of these Lord of the Rings show, raise your hand. DM us on Instagram or Twitter. Our DMs are always open. You can even post on our Facebook group. Go to the OneRing.net. We've got a Facebook group called Worlds and Works of J.R.R. Tolkien. And post in there and raise your hand and say, I want to help. I think I can help. I have time. I have a little bit of time to, put... And look, I don't know. Like, if I get, like, a crazy full-time job, Cliff might need help producing this show. We do it all on Zoom, but, So if anyone out there, I just want to put that out there. I don't think we ask for help enough. And it's not asking for help. It's just saying there's going to be a lot of news coming. I want the whole community of Tolkien fans to stay informed. And there needs to be more than just me and Cliff. Reese Noble says, Shield Maidens of Rohan. I haven't heard this. Oof. I've said too much. No. The War of the Rohirrim is a feature film that was announced by New Line Cinema. It's a Japanese anime. And I promise you, there's no way they tell the story of Helm Hammerhand and the building of Helm's Deep without showcasing the brilliance and of the Shield Maidens of Rohan and why they have a reputation. I'm just speculating, but there's no way in the year 2021, 2, 3, whenever it comes out, that you can't tell a story of Helm Hammerhand and Rohan without showing why the Shield Maidens of Rohan are badass. So, I'm just going to call it the Shield Maidens of Rohan movie because, it's hard to say Helm Hammerhand. So I just love those questions like that. The time, Imran says, time, the most precious and nebulous of commodities. Indeed. Jose, I do not speak Portuguese, but I appreciate you're here. You probably understand what I'm saying. And conversely, I don't. I have a feeling that Brazil's going to be a major part of Amazon's marketing plan because our Facebook stats, there's a ton of you on Facebook that follow the One Ring that are from Brazil. So it's great to have you here. Who else is in the chat room? We've got Ronald and Charlie. So Reese, you heard about that Rohan show. Don't listen to any other of those websites. I saw a Facebook post. People share this stuff. I'm telling you guys, We Got This Covered does not have this covered. I saw a post saying that they're making New Line's going to make a Melkor movie. I'm telling you, they're not. There's nothing else to make. There's nothing making. I promise you, Warner Brothers is not making a Melkor movie. Doesn't matter if We Got This Covered posts this. I hope all of you understand that there are some sites that just deal in drama and make stuff up, and rumors like that are just that. They're just rumors. And I think when Cliff gets here, we're going to dive deep into who can you trust, who is a good voice for news and stuff. We're not the only voice. And JG from Space says, We Got This Covered is always wrong. It's just clickbait. Thank you. And there's a bunch of other channels and accounts, Twitter accounts right now, that are very wrong in their opinions of the news that was big this week. Arna is in the Facebook chat today. He has been with us for months and months and months. It's great to see you here and jumping to all the different platforms. Black Sauce Noodles says, Hobbits in the Second Age? Oh, no. I will say, oh, yes. And when Cliff gets here, he can tell you just how right and how true to Tolkien. We've been talking about fidelity to Tolkien all this time. The news this week is the most fidelity to Tolkien we have yet. JG from Space wants to know, Justin, if you had to guess, when are we getting a trailer for the Amazon TV series? I think we won't get a trailer until February or March. I don't think we're getting one at San Diego Comic-Con Thanksgiving. I don't think we're getting a trailer anytime soon. There's so much work to be done. And they haven't even locked the pilot. And as we all know, the pilot can change. I have to remind everybody that Daenerys was recast. Am I correct, chat room? Daenerys was recast in the Game of Thrones pilot. They originally had another woman. And then it just didn't click, and they recast that part. That could still happen with Lord of the Rings. So, Mark of the Dragon, Nerd of the Rings? Wait. Nerd of the Rings is in the chat room, and he's calling it now Super Bowl. A Super Bowl commercial with the Lord of the Rings trailer. I I might be on your team there, buddy. Let's ask Cliff. He's joining right now. If he will turn on his camera. Hello, Cliff.
Well, hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me and see me. I'm here at the massive Star Trek The Next Generation L-Cars display right behind me here at Scum and Villainy Cantina. There's lots and lots of specific things for every different fandom. Like
Cliff,
every geekdom is represented here. And this is all, next generation stuff behind me.
but before we get into the question of the day, because Nerd of the Rings is in the chat right now, Cliff.
Oh, well, hello, Nerd of the Rings, and hello, everybody. I'm sorry I'm late to the show, but you know how it is. A wizard is never late.
You're at Scum and Villainy Cantina. It's open to the public in
Yes.
Hollywood, and I believe there's two big updates to Scum and Villainy Cantina recently. I think the first one was we had to cancel the Hobbit patio because there was
Yes, bad news, devastating news. That the back patio was going to be the first of its kind and the only of its kind in Los Angeles to have outside patio seating for your dining and cocktails in the Shire. And now that's all.
But what's
gone.
the latest news this week with Scum and Villainy?
Well, hold on. We're going to get to that in just one second. Did you know that a lot of the outdoor materials that were used for making the Shire patio were transitioned inside? So if you're in the interior of the cantina, you'll be able to see the brick walls, the old stonework that was the buildings of Bree, and you can see a giant cave troll from none other than Weta. Was it Weta who designed that cave troll?
Well, Weta designed it, and the Sideshow gave it to us.
Sideshow gave it to us. I was going to get to that part, but it was originally a Weta cave troll design. It's fantastic. So, hey, I'm just so excited. I'm excited to be here. And the other big news, I think, in terms of Los Angeles County public health, they're requiring all the passengers and customers who come into our cantina to have a proof of vaccination record for the indoor dining because we don't have any outdoor dining. That's the other news. Okay, so actually, I heard that they're going to start that on November 4th in LA County, but we're doing it early here. And so not only do you need to give me proof of your identification, but I'll look at proof of your vaccination as soon as you come in as well. And the other big thing today on Tuesday is that Mark Bernardin and director, writer Kevin Smith are going to have their big live show, Fat Man Beyond, right here today. And I'm outside in the breezeway trying to show everybody the Star Trek displays because inside they're preparing for a really big show that they're having tonight.
Well, the first question of the day is, Cliff, we've got Nerd of the Rings in the chat room predicting that the very first trailer will debut at the Super Bowl. What are your thoughts?
Oh, hell yes. That's a brilliant, and you know what? If I had thought about it earlier, I would have. That's something I really, we all should have thought of that earlier, considering that New York Comic Con just came and went this weekend. Big activity at New York Comic Con, people coming back in person to be at the convention. And then also the Thanksgiving weekend here in November 2021, right around the corner from us, is San Diego Comic Con. And you know what? Nothing from Amazon Studios. Nothing.
But we will be there. But we'll be there.
Of course, yeah. We will be there. Guaranteed, the OneRing.net will be there. But the interesting thing is that there's a lack of any marketing materials.
All right, so you're on board.
Materials.
Super Bowl commercial.
I'm so on board because they missed all these opportunities at the recent conventions, and they're not going to do anything at San Diego. Definitely, I think Nerd of the Rings has the best idea that we all should have thought of a long time ago. The Super Bowl is when all eyes on Earth, and especially the press, all the media, the media attention they're going to get from launching a trailer at the Super Bowl, that would be, mind-blowing. It's going to be huge.
Mind blowing.
I think that's a great idea. Great idea.
The chat room is alive. Great to have you all. When is the Super Bowl for people that are not in the U.S.? Well, it is usually
Um,
the last week of January or the first week of
usually,
February.
it usually falls pretty close to my birthday, and my birthday is on Mozart's birthday, January 27th, and I usually get a birthday weekend convoluted with the Super Bowl weekend. It happens all the time. Well,
Yeah.
it happens
So
every few years. Yeah.
so maybe that's when we expect it. And that lines up with what I just said. I don't expect a trailer to February or March. This would put the trailer at the end of January, beginning of February. So we're right in line with that. Um,
We
and
are indeed.
I see Arovandi's having some trouble on YouTube, but that's why we stream on Twitch and Twitter and Facebook. If for some reason one of the websites is giving you a glitch, go to Twitter and check out a latest tweet, and you'll see you can watch right there, or you could go.
Can
Um,
I can I share something as a surprise for you? Now I have a surprise for you, Justin. Most of the time, when people are watching us on Torn Tuesday, it's that guy who's got some bizarre thing that he surprises me with. But now it's my turn. Guess what? Somebody just sent me in the mail. Just got it in the mail yesterday. Our good friend and longtime companion of the OneRing.net family and longtime friend of us here at Torn Tuesday, the great great grandson of J.R.R. Tolkien, Mr. Royd Tolkien, had sent me a copy of his wonderful, wonderful book, which is called There's a Hole in My Bucket. And this extraordinary volume is a personal, very personal memoir of one brother remembering another brother who has passed on. Um, I this is personally touching for me, and it's I get involved in this in a very emotional way because I lost my brother last year in April, and in this story, um, Mike, Royd's brother Mike, who is um, leaving this world because of ALS. Remember the ice bucket challenge that we all did around the world to raise money for research for ALS? Well, Mike succumbed to ALS, but before he passed on, he asked his brother, Royd Tolkien, to take on this amazing bucket list of adventures and mischief and exciting things to memorialize him after he had passed on. And this is so fantastic to me. Can I read the back of this to you?
yes, please.
An inspirational, life-affirming memoir from the great-grandson of J.R.R. Tolkien. Having grown up on their great-grandfather's stories, Royd Tolkien and his brother, Mike, have always enjoyed adventures. So when Mike was diagnosed with motor neuron disease, the brothers decided to use the time they have left to tick off as much as possible from Mike's bucket list, from remote camping in Norway to traveling through Royd's beloved New Zealand. And actually, that's where I met up with the two of them when they were on that journey, and that leg of their journey. Yet when Royd loses Mike, he discovers his brother has been writing another kind of bucket list. 50 things, 50 things that he wanted Royd to do after his death. His first task, Mike wants his mild-mannered brother to trip up on his way to the lectern to deliver his eulogy. He wants him to make a fool of himself and have all these practical jokes and really funny stunts that Mike has set up for his brother to do. What follows is a set of emotionally charged tests that will push Royd firmly out of his comfort zone. Reminds you of a certain hobbit who gets pushed out of his comfort zone. So this is an extraordinary book, and it accompanies a documentary film that Royd is also working on. And I'm just really glad that I've got my copy of this. It's called There's a Hole in My Bucket, and it is an exceptional read, an absolutely riveting, emotional story of brotherly love and support and endearment and grace from beyond the veil. and wild adventures that Mike puts Royd to task for. So highly recommended. Great stuff.
Can't
There
wait
you go.
to read that, and can't wait to see the
Hey,
documentary
I can't
that
wait
is
to have
coming
him
out.
come on, and yeah, he's got to come and talk with us and have a good conversation about the documentary that they're working on. I'm very
Right?
excited about that. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So hi everybody. I'm going to say hi to everybody in the chat, acknowledge everybody in, in the YouTube chat and Twitter, Facebook. We're not doing Periscope anymore, but I think we're on Instagram live, right? So
I think
hello everybody.
we're on Twitter now. So anyway, let me get into the news real quick while Cliff starts browsing through Royd's book. So let me go to split screen.
Oh, split screen.
Big news yesterday. Will
Mm-hmm.
Poulter is cast as Adam Warlock in the MCU. Adam Warlock was teased as the golden character robot thing, whatever the gold people are making in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Remember that was the one with Ego the Planet and Kurt Russell and stuff. Remember the gold people in there, and then the end thing was all about I shall call him Adam. Well, Adam Warlock is a huge MCU character, a huge Marvel character. Will Poulter is no doubt signed on for many, many movies because Adam Warlock is not just a one-off bad guy. He has to do with Fantastic Four. He has to do with the Guardians of the Galaxy. He has a bunch of stuff to do. So you have to think Will Poulter joining the MCU means he's probably on a 10-year multi-movie contract. And I will remind everybody that he was originally cast and signed as Elrond. Look at those eyebrows. This was going to be second age Elrond, maybe even first age Elrond. And I tell you, he looks perfect as Hugo Weaving's younger self. This was one of the most brilliant pieces of casting. At the time, I was so excited, and I was really bummed out when they said...
I was too. What a terrific, terrific piece of casting. And I thought that, honestly, Will Poulter is so good. I thought we needed we needed a real thing to hold on to that would let us say that lead character is a definitely recognizable actor from a number of different franchises, not just Maze Runner, but definitely from, Black Mirror, and certainly from
Bandersnatch
yeah,
and Chronicles of Narnia.
and Chronicles of, as I was just about to finish saying. That's right. I mean, all the way from hardcore sci-fi, Black Mirror, Bandersnatch, to C.S. Lewis himself. And Maze Runner is a guilty indulgence for a lot of people. Yeah, at least, it wasn't as level of Hunger Games, but it's still, YA big adaptation. So
I want to ask you, Cliff. I want to ask you. Here's a great actor who's got the chops and got the looks.
Definitely. What a great piece of casting. As Elrond, he would have been awesome. He would have been so awesome.
So, given the choice between being a MCU theatrical movie star and Elrond Half-Elven in the biggest television series in history, he basically had a choice of 10 years of projects: movies, feature films, or prestige television.
And you know what? I don't even know how to fake that process if I had been in his shoes.
No.
Honestly, if I had been in his shoes, I don't know how I would have struggled with that very Stygian knot. That would be, a knot you could never unravel. Wow. I mean, well, think about it. Knowing my level of Tolkien fandom, I would have jumped on my heart's desire to be part of anything with Arda or Middle Earth, right? That's just me. But in terms of going for larger,
we do know
maybe the Marvel thing was more lucrative because it would involve other side projects. I mean, not only is he going to be Adam Warlock in feature films, but there's going to be all the other animated shows like What If and other live action phase 4, which will eventually go into phase 5 and other shows. And it could actually spin into a life of its own, way, way, way beyond just 4 or 5 seasons on Amazon Prime.
And to answer Jill in the chat room, we do know it was 10 years. We've seen some of the employment contracts that Amazon offered cast and crew, and Amazon wants their actors to commit to 10 years.
Right. Well, imagine that they get extensions, and imagine that it takes more than a year and a half to do a season, and then they extend and go another season.
It's going to take 10 years. It's going to take 10 years to tell 5 seasons. I mean, just the way production goes. But Cliff, I wanted to ask you, when...
well, technically, aren't we already a year and a half into it? Technically, aren't we already
more than that. More than that, we'll get to you on the next actor we're about to talk about. But so Will Poulter, again, great looking actor. So I guess the question is, Cliff, you got 2 franchises. One is Prestige TV. One is the MCU. Feature films versus television. I think they're equal in stature and probably close to equal in pay. Because Elrond is one of the main characters, period. So, his acting price. But I have to wonder, Cliff, I wonder if this weighed on him. There is a difference between playing Adam Warlock, a character that he can totally own as himself. Will is Adam Warlock, versus Lord of the Rings, where he will always be compared to
Hugo Weaving. Well, is it part of the reason why they cast Will is because he has this ability to naturally bear that resemblance to Hugo Weaving?
He looks like Hugo Weaving, and I tell you, it's great casting. It's so great casting.
But you're right. You're right. It's probably him being given the opportunity to, in terms of pure thespian artistry, he could have something to be more proud of and something to sink his teeth into instead of trying to be in the shadow of somebody else.
Anyway, I'm so excited for Will Poulter. I'm going to miss you, man. I don't even know you, but I'm going to miss you as Elrond, half-elven. But congratulations on giving up Elrond for the MCU. You deserve all this success, and what a time. Well, what a time.
It's too bad he couldn't do both, because even Hugo Weaving had the chance to do both.
So the big news this week. This is the big news this week. Let's talk about another actor. The huge news, and we just posted a brand new article with additional insight at theonering.net. Sir Lenny Henry has confirmed his role is an early Hobbit in Amazon's Lord of the Rings show. And before we go into the discussion, I think a lot of people might have read all or part of what Lenny Henry said, but we've got the audio clip. So, Cliff, I'd say if you want to mute your mic for a minute, let's let Lenny speak in his own words for the next couple minutes.
I've done, for the last 2 years, I've been working on Lord of the Rings, and it's an extraordinary thing. It's the biggest, I think it's going to be the biggest television show that's ever been made in terms of money and head count. Literally 100 people on set glaring at you and trying to figure out what you're going to look like 4 feet tall. It's just been an amazing experience, life-changing for me. I had to go to New Zealand 3 times in the last 2 years during lockdown. I was isolated for 2 weeks at a time. I was shouted at by a soldier when I came out on the balcony at the hotel, and I had to go back in. Really, really hard, not hard graft. My dad worked in a factory, so not hard work. Sort of extraordinary work. And then being allowed on set to play. And I'm a Harfoots because J.R.R. Tolkien, who was from Birmingham, why didn't we ever have this in the book? Frodo, come and have a look at this, it's Boston. J.R.R. Tolkien's from Birmingham. Suddenly there were black hobbits. I'm a black hobbit. It's brilliant. And what's notable about this is that about this run of the book, it's a prequel to the age that we've seen in the films and the books. It's about the early days of the Shire and of that of Tolkien's environment. It's the early days of it. So we're an indigenous population of Harfoots, and we're Hobbits, but we're called Harfoots, and we're multicultural. We're a tribe. We're not a race. So there are black and Asian and brown and even Maori types within it. And it's a whole brand new set of adventures that see some of the origins of different characters. And it's going to take at least 10 years to tell the story, because it's based on the Silmarillion, which was almost like a cheat sheet of what happens next in this world, in the first, second, and third ages. And the writers have a lot of fun in extrapolating it all out. Wow. And it's going to be very, very exciting. And there's a very strong female presence in this. There are going to be female heroes in this evocation of the story, and they're going to be little people as usual.
Well, we're looking forward to it very much, Len. We're also looking forward to seeing you.
Well, that is the clip that Lenny says more than you've seen in that little text blurb that's been going about. Cliff, you can unmute now. So that is Lenny Henry in his own words. And let me read some of the reactions from the chat room. Peregrine says, yes, so excited to see this. Arna says, Lenny sounds great. Moth's Audio says, I love how excited he sounds. That makes me happy. Kaylin Griffin says, so amazing. Julia says, I love Lenny Henry. The chat room is amazing.
More importantly, Stephen R. says, how did he get away with saying all that?
He didn't. I bet you he's getting his wrist slapped. But you can't slap. You can't not assault a knight of the Queen. He is Sir Lenny Henry, just as Sir Ian McKellen before him.
That's right. Yeah.
And he has a doctorate. He has a PhD in media studies. Lenny Henry is as smart as they come, and he's officially recognized by the Queen herself. People in the chat room saying Lenny looks the part for a Harfoot. Steven says Amazon is breathing down his neck from now on. Trust in Lenny, says Emma. And Anna says his voice is lovely. Now, folks, doesn't he sound like a hobbit already? Just listening to his voice, he sounds he sounds perfectly like a hobbit. And as he mentions in that interview, Tolkien lived in Birmingham, and he's from Birmingham, and so there are so many connections to this. Brecklin in the chat room says, yes, he sounds like a hobbit. His voice sure does. He just sounds like that. Now, here's what I'll remind everybody. What we've learned from that interview is, here's the new information. You might remember that we reported on Lenny Henry being a Harfoot just a couple months ago. Remember, we reported that Lenny was flying to New Zealand in February, January and February, and we heard rumors that he was going to be a short-statured person in like April and May. And Cliff, do you remember all the conversations we had of like, is he a dwarf king? Is he a dwarf king, or is he a halfling? But why would there be halflings? And then we started hearing these rumors of Harfoots, and so it's the new information that we just heard that was not reported on other websites. You just heard it on this show. Lenny Henry confirms he's been to New Zealand 3 times in the last 2 years. 3 times, which means he has more than a cameo. He's been involved in production since day 1. He's been involved since the pilot was shot with J.A. Bayona. And since he's been to New Zealand in 3 times for different filming segments during the pandemic. This is new information. We thought he had just shown up this year in February. We thought that was his only time on set. Turns out that was his 3rd time on set. And he's been involved in production for the whole 2 years, which means he's part of the pilot. Cliff,
indeed.
What's your reaction to Lenny Henry having a more significant role than just a single episode cameo of like, hi, Hobbits?
Well, my reaction is, this is cool that we're getting insights immediately into what they're doing in the writer's room in terms of chronology and the timeline. And other people have critically pointed out some of the maybe perceived mistakes that he has said in his statement. You know, that one that's floating around
Right.
about
So that
material from the Silmarillion, and also trying to reckon the reckoning of the early beginnings of the Shire. So
So I
we're
think now that we've heard him in his own voice, and again
sure.
we link to it on our website if you go to theonering.net. But now that you've heard it in his own voice, you can tell that he was not carefully selecting his words to make sure that it was lore accurate. Right? You could tell. You just heard it. It's 2 minutes, and he's just like blurting out. And then there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this, and then there's this. You guys, when you heard his own voice and the excitement in it, it takes a different tone than reading the words on screen and being like, wait, he's got it wrong there. It wasn't about being right or wrong. It's all accurate to the books, but he was just blurting it out. And then there's this, and then there's this. So I hope let's give some context to what everybody's getting up in arms about, because if you just
Sure.
read the text, it takes up a whole different connotation than you hear his excitement.
That is also true, and fair to mention that. But let me go on with answering your first question about my initial reaction to this. My reaction is not what most people are bitching about. A lot of people are just like, oh, blah, blah, blah. Is it even appropriate or true to Tolkien to have, you know, that much melanin in somebody's skin while they're playing a Harfoot? And I'm like, I don't even think about that. That's a lot of nonsense to even. The real issue for me is, why are we getting the strong sense of time crunching with the writer's room telling us that we're doing a second age show? And now Sir Lenny, in his boundless enthusiasm, has given us a clue that he's talking about the early stages of the Shire, when that doesn't happen until thousands of years later in the Third Age. That's
The physical Shire
maybe
folk, and the physical Shire.
the physical Shire that was granted to them by Argaleb II, who was a king of Arthedain. You know, the northern kingdoms of Arnor was different from the southern kingdom of Gondor. You remember this from your histories, and we might learn something about that during the entirety of the Second Age show. But there was no Shire even being founded in the Second Age. So instead of me having a reaction about, you know, Lenny Henry and his skin color, I'm not even thinking on that level. You know, intellectually, as a Tolkien nerd, I'm thinking about the dates of when the Shire was actually founded. So that kind of clues you in on,
Okay,
you know,
so
my mental level of discourse. What is more interesting to me is that we have proof positive that the Silmarillion, or some of the Silmarillion rather, specifically certain material that Amazon wanted to get their hands on, they succeeded. And they got into bed with the Tolkien estate. And now we have proof, absolute proof, that the Silmarillion, for the first time ever, partially, the Silmarillion is being used. But we also are stunningly aware of time crunching or time expanding, whatever it is you want to call it. But I'm thinking about them playing fast and loose with when there were migrations of hobbits or pre-hobbits migrating westwards over the Misty Mountains. And you know what we realized? They're going along with the conceit that J.R.R. Tolkien started himself. He had the conceit in his own appendix that this is the first time that the Halflings enter the records of history. And that's because the records of history, according to his conceit, were being kept by the elves, mostly the elves. And when you suddenly get into reading The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, it's the first time that you're getting a hobbit giving a perspective of history through the hobbit's eyes, not through the Silmarillion, which is definitely through the Noldor, through the eyes of the elves. So I guess the idea that they're playing with in the Amazon writer's room is that there was no specific written history. And Tolkien says in the prologue of Lord of the Rings that the earliest group of people who were heading westward were the Harfoots. The Harfoots. Look, it's JC who's come to visit and say hi to all the fans on the wondering.net. It's JC, the owner of Scum and Villainy, saying hello.
We've got the Kevin Smith show tonight.
Yeah, we already promoted it. We already promoted it.
They're getting ready for Kevin and Mark Bernardin. So good luck to you, good sir. Very good, sir.
My
main interest is how angry are the fans going to get, or how far is the Tolkien estate going to let them go with pushing elements thousands and thousands of years into the second
They already said that in the second or third press release, the Tolkien estate and Amazon Studios said that they are open to compressing time, because you have to for a feature film. You just have to. You have to compress time. And by the way, the first image that they released is not Second Age, and the character that we just confirmed 2 weeks ago is not a Second Age character. So,
that makes it even more weird. Now, we're dealing with a Second Age show. Listen and look at what we've got so far. The only stuff we have are Harfoots, who we know are in the appendix in the Third Age.
Okay.
And we have Finrod from the First Age. So why is it we're
all over the place?
I know, we're all over the place. Where is the second
age stuff?
Where's the second age stuff?
Where's the Second Age stuff? You're killing us. You're killing us. Now, Cliff. So hearing it in Lenny's voice, you can. This is why I wanted to play the audio, because hearing it in his voice, you can tell that he's just rapid fire, just so excited, just like, and then there's this, and then there's this. So when everyone got caught up on the word Shire, it became a red flag, and I can tell you, and I don't think Cliff could hear the audio, but the audience could. When you guys heard it, you could hear his excitement. He's just blurting out stuff, okay?
He's just an excited kid. He is like a kid who's so excited he's stumbling over himself with the precise details of what he's talking about. Yes, granted, we need to allow him that. Yes.
Right. So Cliff, we're about. Let's jump into the reaction. I'm not even going to call it a fan reaction, because some of the stuff is so dirty and dishonest. They aren't fans. But what has been
that's fair. That's fair.
What have you seen as what has been the immediate reaction that you've seen across Twitter and Reddit and some of our comments on Facebook? What's been the reaction? There's half of the fans that are like, "Oh my God, this is amazing, super positive. I'm so excited. Any news is good news." But there's been other opinions. And Cliff, can you just quickly run down what issues people are having?
I guess that there's some people who, any toxic fandom actually starts from graduating from "I love this" to "I own this." And when you mentally go from that place of "I love this," I'm looking at you Star Wars fans, and you go and transition from "I love this" to "I own this," and then you transition further to "I control this," or "I must control this," or it gets further and further down the road mentally when you do that. And I think, unfortunately, some of that has permeated into the Tolkien fandom, unfortunately, where people want to hold on to their own notions. They want to hold on to their own ideas and project them all over Tolkien. And, I'm sure that counter argument is used, against me in my position all the time. I'm sure that's the exact same thing that I'm here in utterly unironic response. I'm sure that's what I would hear. But, the other part of the fandom that fails to recognize that Professor Tolkien was pretty clear, as his grandson, Simon Tolkien, has actually expressed in social media recently, but Tolkien was pretty clear that it is canon to have different strains of hobbits as tribes of hobbits be very different in complexion. And he writes out that way, okay? So that's all there is to it. That's all there is to it. It's canon. And beyond that point, there's no fighting over it, and there's no need for doing the mental gymnastics that you have to do to try to project your own weird little, perverted white porcelain white world. But there is also the unique quality of where Peter Jackson left us. He didn't have, any people of color from other areas of Arda, considering the larger geography of the whole planet, and until later in the Hobbit trilogy, then we had an inkling, a little idea that there were other characters in Arda that were not just porcelain white. Even back in the Oscars in 2002, when Fellowship of the Ring was up for all those nominations, Whoopi Goldberg was the host of the Oscars telecast, and she cracked a good joke about how white all the people were in Fellowship of the Ring and all the white hobbits. And she said, actually, and where are all the black hobbits? I wonder where they are. The audience laughs. And then she pauses and she says, and what would we call them if they were there? Blobbits? And she made the Blobbits joke. Black hobbits, Blobbits. She made the joke. I mean, there has been for decades and decades now, literally, an awareness of the way people represented Middle Earth and the way that we as a fandom, as consumers of the literature, like people who read and live by the graceful spiritual lessons that we learn from reading Tolkien. And that's one of the main reasons why we keep coming back to him. And Professor Tolkien never had characters had a failing, any type of failing, because of their skin color, because they were dark, or because they were associated with black, like that old stupid argument. Professor Tolkien's characters had a moral failing that was always spiritual at its roots. He was not interested in any type of discourse about race beyond what Captain Faramir, the captain of the guard of Ithilien, says when he remarks on one of the foreigners who had been killed at the hands of one of his rangers, right before they drag Sam and Frodo into the Forbidden Pool and the Henneth Anun waterfall area. There's this monologue that is in the text of The Lord of the Rings, where Professor Tolkien clearly lays out his ideas about white people versus dark-skinned people on the battlefield. And that dialogue is it's so important, and it is incredibly revealing of the author's point of view through Faramir's eyes, where he says, look at this poor lad. What lies were told to him, and what fear and lies were used to take him so far away from the comfort of his own home to be on the battlefield against other people who would otherwise not wish him ill at all. And so, Professor Tolkien is interested in telling us, hold on, I'm gonna mute my microphone.
People are driving around right now. We got people in the chat room are reminding us that it was Sam in the books and it was Faramir in the movie.
That would be Faramir in the movie and Sam in the books. And thank you very much for that clarification. That's what I'm thank you. Here I am, driven to the point of, confusing the details because of my familiarity with both the books and my familiarity with the films as well. But Samwise's dialogue, and in the movie it becomes Faramir's, Samwise's observation of people put against each other, Tolkien is telling us that there are metaphysical reasons why Morgoth and later on Sauron would go and use the tools of terror and fear and evil to manipulate people against the Númenóreans, against Morgoth's and Sauron's enemies. So it's, any of this stuff where we're talking about, racially sensitive conversation about what kind of races are represented in Arda, and whether or not it's appropriate to have people of color in a TV show about Arda. I'm like, really, people, all you got to do is pull the framework further and further out and look at the planet and look at the spiritual conversation that J.R.R. Tolkien was having all along. It was never about differences in race. It was about differences in spirit. It was about differences in spirit. And it's just quite something else to have that ugly part of fandom raise its ugly head and start screaming about Nordic this and Scandinavian that and Celtic and Nordic everything. That's from Professor Tolkien's linguistic pursuits, the languages that he was most interested in. That's not talking about every being that's on the whole planet, and the planet itself is a large stage upon which great spiritual powers are waging spiritual warfare and manipulating entire nations, entire peoples and nations and cultures being manipulated by Morgoth. It's about, we need to elevate the conversation because it's not about race. It never really was. So that's pretty much all I have to say. I don't need to lecture everybody about this, but I mean, come on, get a grip on this. We understand and appreciate Professor Tolkien's immeasurable scholarship in Icelandic and Finnish and the Elder Eddas and Anglo-Saxon, and of course, his great passion for these languages. But we also acknowledge that the tiny framework of the Third Age is only a small framework in one pocket corner of the pool table. And there's so many other corners of Arda with so many other people that we're now going to explore. And because we know a lot about the Númenóreans being colonizers, and we know about their colonizing behaviors, it is not surprising that there's a big multiracial cast for a big world. It's a big, wide world. And
it's too early to have these debates because the show is going to get into some difficult subjects. If you've read what happens in the Second Age and what the Númenóreans are responsible for, that we should not be in a place right now where we're debating anything, because it's going to get going to get heavy. And and in our leaked report, some of the stuff that we've heard the elves go through is incredibly challenging. Now, before we keep on this conversation, I just want to say that it's a loud minority. It's a loud minority of people glomming on to the excitement of Lord of the Rings that are screaming about how this isn't true to Tolkien. Because if you read the first chapter of Lord of the Rings, literally
the prologue.
If you read the first pages, if you just open the first pages of Lord of the Rings, the book that kicks off everything here, it's in the first pages. And let me bring that up on screen. Eva on Twitter was quick to remind everybody the prologue concerning Hobbits, Fellowship of the Ring, page 3. Quote, before the crossing of the mountains, the Hobbits had already become divided into 3 somewhat different breeds: Harfoots, Stoors, and Fallowhides. The Harfoots were browner of skin, smaller and shorter, and they were beardless and bootless. Their hands and feet were neat and nimble, and they preferred highlands and hillsides. The Stoors were broader, heavier in build. Their feet and hands were larger, and they preferred flatlands and riversides. The Fallowhides were fairer of skin and also of hair, and they were taller and slimmer than the others, and they were lovers of trees and woodlands. The Harfoots, it continues. Not only did Tolkien want to describe all 3 proto-hobbits, but he gives Harfoots a whole second paragraph, which is significant. Again, let's go. Paragraph 2. The Harfoots had much to do with dwarves in ancient times, and long lived in the foothills and of the mountains. They moved westward early and roamed over Eriador as far as Weathertop, a place that we all know, while the others were still in Wilderland. They were the most normal and representative variety of hobbit, and far the most numerous. They were the most inclined to settle in one place, longest preserved in their ancestral habit of living in tunnels and holes. So, Cliff, this completely opens the door. These two paragraphs, not only did Tolkien intentionally give extra paper to the Harfoots, but he describes them as browner of skin and smaller and shorter. And he describes them as longest preserved in their ancestral habit. And then if we go back to what Sir Lenny Henry says, we're Harfoots, we're multicultural, we're a tribe, not a race. So we're black, we're Asian, we're brown, and we're even Maori types in it.
Maori.
Maori.
How about that? It is, and you know what? I'm glad that we're having this discussion now, so we can just put it to bed, and not ever, like people in the chat are saying, especially with Stephen. I'm like, yeah, I'm living for the day that we don't have to parse this conversation anymore.
You know what? And there's
it's now time for me to say farewell and good night to everyone, because they're letting in this very large audience to come in for Mark Bernardin and Kevin Smith's live show. So I will allow you, Justin, to say goodnight to everyone.
Oh boy, we're going to get in some trouble now.
Finish the show on my behalf. Good night, everybody. And thank you again, like I said in the YouTube chat, thank you everybody for being so honest and egalitarian and generous in your listening. That's all we have to do for each other, for this fandom to not turn into what Star Wars did. We have to be open in our listening and understand each other, and make sure that we just, block the dumb accounts that are just stupid robot accounts that are coming up just to stir up trouble for no reason. So we just, block them. So good times. Thank you for everything. I'll see you guys next Tuesday here on Torn Tuesday. Thank you, Justin, for sending us out. Everybody, all right. See you soon. Bye.
And as we close to go to wrap up this conversation, there our chat room even has some of these people, and someone said, where was that comment? There's a few of you here that had an opinion, but Macri in the chat room said browners, not sub-Sahara. I hate to tell you this, Africa does not exist in Middle-earth. There is no such thing as Africa, or Sahara, or sub-Saharan, or anything. And we're not going to get. There's no point in getting into discussion of how black anyone is, or how brown or anyone is, or how white or how porcelain white anyone is. The fact is, let's go to Tolkien. He says, the Tolkien himself wrote, the Harfoots were browner of skin, smaller and shorter. They were beardless and bootless. And the Harfoots had much to do with the dwarves, and they were the most normal and representative variety of hobbit, and by far the most numerous. And again, let's go back to Lenny Henry. Harfoots were multicultural. We're a tribe, not a race. We're a tribe. So we're black, we're Asian, we're brown, even Maori types. So it's disingenuous. It's disingenuous to say that they miscast this. They actually cast the most perfect person with the best demeanor, the comedic sensibilities of Lenny Henry, and you heard his voice earlier in the show, and he's the perfect Hobbit. He is the perfect Hobbit. And that's why I want to say, I don't want to include people who want to debate this in the fandom, because they're not fans. You would read the first prologue, page 3 of Lord of the Rings, and you wouldn't have anything to argue. Read the dang books. Read Tolkien. Read Lord of the Rings. Read the prologue. read it again. Read page 3 10 times, and then flip to the appendices. If you go to the appendices, there's a bunch of footnotes that says Harfoots were in the first age. So let's talk about shortening timelines. If you look at the appendices by the hand of Tolkien himself, he makes a little comment that says the Halflings, the Harfoots, whatever, were all the way back in the first age. So it totally makes sense that they're in the second age, and they're numerous, and they're all over the place. So, as we've just seen from Tolkien's own hand, in the prologue, in the beginning of the book, and at the end of the book, the Halflings, the Harfoots, are clearly in the second age by his own hand, and clearly they look like Lenny Henry and everyone else they cast. And I can't wait to see the rest of the cast. So there is no debate. Any debate about the casting, the look, and the timeline, you are debating Tolkien himself. And as far as I'm concerned, that does not make you a fan of Tolkien. It makes you a fan of debate, because you're arguing with Tolkien. Good on you. I wouldn't argue with Tolkien. I'll argue with Cliff all day long, but I can't argue with Tolkien. And this is the latest adaptation. So there's a loud minority. There's a loud small group of people, not even fans, just people that want to debate this. They want to debate it on our Facebook comments, and they want to debate it on Twitter, and they want to debate it on Reddit, and I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of YouTube videos how Lord of the Rings is going woke. If any of these people read page 3 of Lord of the Rings and the appendices of Return of the King, their arguments are invalid. They're shut down. So there's no point in listening to any of that. So from a One Ring perspective, we encourage debate. Again, people have been arguing over whether Balrogs have wings that work. Do Balrogs have wings enough to support their weight and that can fly? Should Peter of Jackson put flying wings on the Balrog? Fans have been debating, do Balrogs have wings, for 50 years. And if you want to know how long they've been debating it, watch Cliff's documentary, Ringers, Lord of the Fans. This is not that. This is not up for a debate. Tolkien is extremely clear on the Harfoots. So, there's a bunch of accounts that are saying very nasty things. And I'm getting a new perspective of some of these people, because they're totally wrong and they're totally anti-Tolkien. If they're against Lenny Henry and the Second Age Harfoots, then they're against Tolkien. You can debate whether you like Lenny Henry's comedy and whether he was the right comedian. Yeah, you can debate that all day long. So at the One Ring, we've always encouraged debate. We know fandom comes from all walks of life because everybody finds themselves in Tolkien. Everybody, and Tolkien wanted that. He wanted the reader to bring their own. It's the whole allegory conversation, whatever. So everybody brings their own lived-in experience into these books and stories. But what we will not accept is when you start calling names, and calling people woke because they think this and that. Like, we don't do name calling here in the fandom, right? We have informed, intelligent debate. We cite sources, and at the end of the day, we go to Tolkien's text. And some people will never admit that Balrogs have wings. Many of you in the chat room still want to have that Balrogs don't have wings debate, and I'll save that debate for another time. Maybe we should. Did anyone do motion capture for the Balrog? So that's what I want to say So Cliff said it best. You can rewind this episode, listen to Lenny Henry in his own words. Do not. It's important to listen to him say the words rather than just read them, because he tells you a lot more when he orally says it, and you can hear his excitement. It's not about facts and like Shire. Everybody fixated on the word Shire. If you listen to it in context, it's more broad. He was just rapid fire, so exciting. And I am so excited. This one thing from Lenny Henry, who I'm sure is going to get yelled at. Hope his pay doesn't get docked. Who I'm sure it's going to get yelled at by Amazon for saying so much. This is the most information we've officially received on this show since it began. So yeah, that's this is the best news. This is better than the Finrod news. And honestly, I think this is more exciting than the photo that Amazon officially released. I think this Lenny Henry news is. People in the chat room were saying Gandalf was talking to the Balrog when he said, "Fly, you fool." See, even Gandalf knew the Balrog could fly. Like, people have to fly. No, I'm not challenging Otaku in the chat rooms. I'm not challenging people's fandom. You can be a fan, but don't say that you're a leading Tolkien fan if you don't even know what was in chapter 1, let alone the appendices which this show is based on. Like, there is no debate. The debate is over. Chapter 1 and the last chapter of the appendices tell you that Harfoots are in the Second Age, and Harfoots look like what we just saw. And we're really excited for this. And I don't think there's anyone else in the cast that is powerful enough and secure enough in their career to leak like this. I think Lenny Henry was always going to be our number one leaker. It's kind of like Ian McKellen when he sent the One Ring, that picture of the shadow, Gandalf's shadow in the hat. That was the first time anyone had ever seen Gandalf was his shadow. They could yell at Ian McKellen, but they can't fire Ian McKellen. Because he's Ian McKellen. I think Lenny Henry is right up there. I mean, he's knighted by the Queen. What are you gonna do? You're gonna just gently say, "Sir, we're not happy that you did that. Please don't do that." I don't think any other actor has the reputation that to leak anything more, and this might be our last leak for a while. So that's what I have to say about all of that. So that doesn't mean that your interpretation is correct. Well, I can tell you that any interpretation that devalues Tolkien's written words in the book is the wrong. I can have my opinions are wrong all the time, and Cliff tells me. But on this particular issue, Tolkien is right. Tolkien is the only one that can be right. And that's it. So, who was that? I didn't even see what that was. It's kind of creepy. Maybe I should leave. I got some weirdos here. This is Justin. This is Torn Tuesday. We're here every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to get into it. Hopefully we can get Roy Tolkien on the show and talk about his book. And he's got a documentary coming out on Amazon Prime that goes along with the book because he filmed all of the bucket list stuff. And I can't wait to see that documentary. I thank you, everybody, for joining us. I thank Cliff for joining us. I want to thank the Tolkien professor for joining us last week and giving us the breakdown of Finrod and how Finrod connects to all the characters that we've talked about, even Aragorn. If you put all these pieces together, we're getting some interesting thing where everything in the Lord of the Rings, Aragorn and the Shire folk, we're getting all of their histories in Amazon's show. And we know Galadriel's in it. We know Elrond's in it. We know Finrod's in it. We know the proto-hobbits, the Harfoots are in it now, the early Shire folk. We know, if with Finrod, we know Finrod made the ring that Aragorn wears. So, there's a lot of things that are connecting in this show to what we know, and it's most exciting. So, we'll be here every week. We'll be here next week. Who knows what we're going to talk about. But, please, we're going to try to give you guys that have read Tolkien the power and the information you need to just shut down all of these trolls and all of these nasty conversations, because no one needs this toxicity in this fandom. We're better than Star Wars fans, okay? Shut them down. Read chapter 0, the prologue, and read the appendices, and there's no other conversation about it. This is Torn Tuesday. I'll see you next week. Or what does Cliff always say? Bonjour and boudoir? No. He says good night and good luck. He says buenos noches y buena suerte.